Welcome to How to Win. We're going to interview three couples today, and we're going to talk about marriage and relationships and how marriage has some ups and has some downs, has some transition, and it goes through seasons. So we're going to look at these couples, interview them, and find out how they navigated through the various seasons of marital life.
I was traveling a lot with my job. I was sitting at Starbucks in Biloxi, sitting out there, and I decided I'm gonna upload Match.com, and I was real leery about that because I was like, I can't. This is online dating, but I said I'm gonna try, and I saw her face. I said, oh, I know her. And I remembered her from years ago at Faith Chapel. And so I got on there and I reached out. And that's kind of how it was. And then I reached out and started dialoguing. And I got nervous about being online dating. So I deleted the app for a minute. And then she replied, I didn't even know it. And a while back, I was sitting in another restaurant. I was sitting in a restaurant after being off work. So I pulled it up, I downloaded again. And she replied. I was like, oh, okay. And then we kind of exchanged numbers and went from there.
So we met as teenagers, and from my best friend, and so she knew this guy. I knew of him because he played basketball, and so she introduced us like early on. Yeah, we were teenagers, and first impression of him, I was like, oh, he's cute.
I had somebody had mentioned Sanjanetta, she had a brother. So I played basketball with her brother. So they had mentioned, Sanjanetta's coming down. I said, who's Sanjanetta? So it kind of went like that. And I think the first time I saw her, it was in Tuscaloosa, right?
On the bus.
Well, the first time,
yeah.
she was young then, but it was,
Like
we
10 or
we
12
both used to go to
years old,
Chicago during the summer, but we didn't know each other. So it was on the Greyhound bus, and then I saw her, but it was a long, long time ago. But when I first saw her, I said, okay, yeah, she's cute as well.
We actually met met on the dating app during COVID. Was it COVID?
Hinge.
Hinge.
April 2020.
April 2020. And we matched during on Hinge. It was actually wasn't nothing, of course, to be happy about, but she was going to her grandmother's funeral, and my mother's funeral was
The next day.
So we met in a time of grievance. And she said, hey, we should, meet at Railroad Park. And we met at Railroad Park like the following week or so, and we just, she put me in the friend zone. I ain't gonna lie, she put me in the friend zone because of I was practicing a different religion at that point in time. And so she said, this will never go further than friends. I was like, yeah, it's cool. But I was, in my heart, I was like, man, I think she's going to be a good one.
I was in the singles ministry, and we were challenged to, get back out there. So we did meet on Match.com. We came up 97%, and I saw him. I was like, oh my God, I had a different reaction. I tried that for the church before. So I also came off of Match.com, and then he reached out to me through Messenger. And a year later, we have it documented and everything. And
She good about that. She gonna keep them documents.
and I just thought, he had a really nice smile, and I'm not going to be afraid just because, I met someone at church. I want them to have those values too.
After that, we still, she'll check on me and stuff, but I had a crush on her though, for real. Like, I was crushing on her, so I'd be in her inbox, I'd be like, Lord, let me get my stuff together. And she'd be like, boy, you ain't ready. And after that, we fast forward, I had my two oldest kids and stuff like that. She would check on me, and she'd be like, what you and them kids over there doing? I was like, they spending all my money and stuff. She said, you got it. After that, we went to, it was Valentine's Day, 2021. No, it was coming up on Valentine's Day. And so she got in my inbox. She said, what we doing for Valentine's Day? So I never post on social media like that. I never be on posting in my stories or anything like that. But I responded right away. And I said, we're going to Cajun Rule. What time you want me to pick you up? 8 o'clock sound good?
I used to call her. So I called once during the summer. And I think her friend that had told her about me, she said, "Oh, LaRon, this guy tried." And I think she showed you a picture.
Right.
So she said he tried to call. She told her to tell me to try again. So I called again. So to call her, I had to drive 3 miles to a payphone because from where I live, it was long distance to her. So I had to drive 3 miles in a payphone and call her. And the first time I think I called her, her mom said, "Boy, don't call her no more. Say it ain't cold." Like that. I said, "Oh, man." And hung up, I said, "Wow." So the next day, I went down there. I said, "Let me call again." I said, "May I speak to Sam?" She said, "Hold on."
It was just his smile, his approach. He said, "I have 2 grown children." He put that grown children in there. And I just really liked him. I liked his smile.
What
So-
made you hesitant about talking to somebody from church?
Well, I met someone from church before, it didn't work out. Yeah. And so I held everybody to that standard.
He wasn't Christian at the time. He wasn't practicing Christianity. He grew up Christian, grew up in a Baptist home, Southern Baptist, Uniontown.
Union Springs.
Sorry,
right.
Union Springs. Sorry, Union Springs, Alabama. I think it came up maybe, was it our first time meeting at Railroad Park?
I think Ramadan was going on actually, and so the prayer alarm was going off while we were walking around the park. And she's like, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's just an alarm for prayer." So she was like, "Prayer?" But how you ever heard those alarms for like Ramadan? How they, say speaking in Arabic
It
and stuff.
sound like the beginning of Lion King.
Oh, it does.
Yes, it did. It did. That's what I told Charity.
The alarm was going off, and so she was like, so I think it wasn't that day. It might have been like, because I think we've been out there like a week.
We had been going out there for weeks.
Yeah.
And I think you told me our first time meeting at Railroad Park that you were practicing Islam. And I noted, and I was like, okay, well, this isn't going anywhere, but it wasn't the place to say it. It wasn't the time to say it because I was open to meeting people and just in some seasons a person is a friend, next season they're your spouse. So I didn't know that, but yeah, I didn't want to cut him off just because of that, because maybe he was sent to be just a really good friend. And so, but when he played when that alarm went off, I was like, oh, he's really into this. And so I felt like we were spending time with each other, meeting at Railroad Park, going to meet at restaurants and eating in the car, because at that time during COVID, you couldn't eat in restaurants.
Yeah.
And so I felt like he was really starting to like me a whole lot more. And I was just like, hey, this is not, I'm open to learning about things, but like, this is not going to go anywhere because I want to marry someone who believes the same things that I believe. And,
She said she wanted to be with somebody she could take home to her daddy.
I had been dating and I was traveling a lot, and I just things weren't going organically for relationships. So I just said, hey, I'm going to stop for a while. But then I saw her and she just piqued my interest. And, I said, And then one day, I like I said, I reached out on Match.com. And then I said, well, let's connect. Let's get together. I gave her my number. And I didn't hear from her. She said she was going to call me the next day. I didn't hear from her. She waited about a week. And then she finally told me because she looked up my birth date. And the birth date was the day before her ex. So she waited. But then we finally got together, and I really wanted to make it special, a good evening. So some of the times when I brought my team into town, I would have to go vet a restaurant. So I went to this. I had already vetted this restaurant, and it was real nice. Seasons 52, and we took her there. They had a piano bar playing at the thing, and she was dressed nice. And when I got there, she was just so bubbly. and it was just so natural and organic. And we talked, and then we left the restaurant at the Summit, and we walked the whole mall, and just walked and just talked. And I don't know what happened. I just grabbed her hand. That's kind of what happened.
So that's how it all started. Yeah, he called, and I didn't know he called, so my mom didn't tell me, because no boys had ever called the house, and being the youngest of the 15, it was they were very protective of all of us, and so and then that was the first boy that ever called to talk to me. So yeah, but it advanced after that.
It was so nice because I didn't know what to expect, right? But in that moment, to answer your question, I just felt like we were just good friends, like we knew each other. We were so different. We are so different. And I just felt like we connected like a puzzle when he grabbed my hand.
I'm a married kind of guy. That's just who I am. I was out there dating, and it was just different, a lot different, because I had been married for 20 years, and things were very different. So I had to learn a lot of the games. I was shocked at some things, and then I also was learning about myself, about what I wanted to do differently and how I want to be differently. So it was a challenge, but I was hopeful. I made sure that at the time I actually was living in Georgia. I moved back here, and I started coming back here to Faith Chapel. And one of the first things I did was join a single small group, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be around the right people, and that I get an opportunity to learn about dating again. So I did that, and then I started a small group called Single Men of God. So we could get together, so we can have guys together that we can encourage each other, mentor each other, because my goal was to get married again. And I knew that you got to do something different. And so we did that for a while.
I was mainly, I was like, it's cool. I said, it's cool. I couldn't change her mind about it, because that was something, on religious type. And I told my aunt, and she was like, you shouldn't be practicing that crap anyway. I was like, I said, Auntie, you can't say that. She said, well, you grew up in a Southern church. You ain't gonna meet no good Christian woman. You're not gonna meet a Islamic woman that you want here in the South. And I said, yeah, you're right. And so she said, stop bringing your butt back to church with me. And I was like, I ain't going to your church. And she wanted me to go back. I was like, oh, hey, I ain't going to your church. But from that point on, I was like, yeah, get back to what you know.
So for me, I had to make sure that it was for real. I wasn't very trusting, and so he told me later on. I don't know if we were married or dating. He said, I knew that you were going to be my wife, because I told the guys that I work with that you were going to be my wife. I said that was never my thought. I never thought I was going to get married to him. And but it was a couple of years, because we kind of broke up in the interim, and then we were just friends. And so he wrote these wonderful letters from college, and because again, no cell phone, no any of that. So he wrote letters, and so I think maybe I was maybe 17, 18, and I realized, like, oh, okay, this must be love. I think this is what this is about. So
I think it was our conversation. I mean, we usually have we just talk all the time. What we talked about, I have no idea. But we talked a lot. And by her parents being, I guess, strict or protective, so I couldn't really see her in person. So we talked, so I got a chance to get to know her. And I think that what made the difference, So I had that time to get to know her and just find out who she was. And so I think it was that.
We didn't date.
Oh, y'all didn't date?
Yes, we did.
Well, it wasn't. We went from, tell her what happened.
We dated. We dated. And then one day, she came to me and says, so, what are we doing? This was probably, let me see, July, August, September, October, around November. It's when she said October, November.
We weren't exclusively dating.
Yeah. And I said, okay. And I didn't know what to do. I felt pressured. But in my heart, I felt okay. And by that December, so 5 months later, I proposed.
It was very important to me that it was going to be serious. So when he asked about the pressure part, I'm not asking just for me. I'm asking for my children. So I can't have you around my kids, and I don't want to confuse them. You know. So I was very very specific and strategic on him being around them because they became to like him a lot. You know, they enjoyed him. He is the only person who's ever met my two children that I've dated outside of their dads. And so, so I didn't have two grown children, but they were younger. So
It wasn't very detailed in that they were really checking on me that kind of way, but they did have opinions about who I dated, and they would definitely let me know. I went on a few dates, and it's like, Dad, stuff like that. So they would definitely let me know, and I'm grateful for that because I do respect their opinion. But also, I try to keep that balance, knowing because they don't know everything about who I'm dating, but the most obvious stuff. And guess what? I'm not with them now. That's the whole point. That. So they definitely have opinions.
yeah, we have 4 opinionated children.
Yeah.
I think, was it after the date or whatever?
Yeah, but see, he converted back to Christianity because that conversation was like at the end of May.
May. And so we went, not that date we went on, after Valentine's Day,
Fast forward.
2021. And so she says, food comes. I said, let me bless the food. And so I said, bless the food. So she was like,
He had never. We had shared a couple of meals together again in the car. He had never prayed over the food, and I was like,
so she said, when you get back on this train? I was like, oh, months ago,
August.
Yeah.
August.
Right after that, so she was like, well, why you ain't saying nothing to me? I was like, I don't know, just didn't tell you. So
I don't know. Keldrick and I had such great conversations. Like, I enjoyed spending space and time with him. And I was like, well, maybe he can be a good friend. Like, I don't want to cut that off because I could learn something from him.
I would come over, hang TVs at our house, hang blinds. She was like, somebody hang a TV? I was like, me? What you need that? Whatever. I was trying to just be close to her.
So it was like friend zone for like almost a year.
Almost about 10 months.
About 10 months. Yeah. And then we like officially started dating in February.
Even when we were dating, she would like put her hands on me and pray over me and stuff like that. And I never had that before with anybody before. So I was like, this is a true God-fearing woman, and can't let this get away, And I said she was into, she was into fitness, she was into health, she was into everything that she checked every box for me, every box from looks down to personality. So I said, if everything is great, we're going to. That she's going to be the one for me.
I can't say it was like a light bulb went off at one moment specifically. Everything Keldrick said he was going to do, he did. Even to this day. Like, everything he said he was going to do, he did. I felt safe. He took care of me. He was honest. The conversation, again, was amazing. I felt like he was home.
Get to know the person, see both sides of the person, not just that honeymoon stage, not just the great and wonderful. Like, I've never seen him really just be just mad and that, because that's not his personality. So I didn't get to like see I know he was like a little stubborn, but get to know the person, not just what you see on social media, not just that the great and wonderful side. What is that person like in challenges? How do they handle challenges? And so for me, don't just jump into it thinking it's gonna always be like dating and it's work. That's what I would tell a 20-something-year-old, 30, 40, whomever, that marriage is work. It's not just all of a sudden, you just snap your finger and everything is great and wonderful. It is work behind it. So, And that's what we try to do. We work at it.
Yeah.
Before we even went into
Oh, that's right.
a committed relationship, we went through premarital counseling because we didn't. I felt pressured on my first marriage. So I didn't want us to be pressured. And
Yeah.
if we didn't think it was going to work out, I wanted us to be able to walk away from it. So we went through premarital counseling before we were in a committed relationship.
And I recommend that highly.
Yeah, our children.
My son just did it with his fiance. They went through premarital counseling before they proposed.
Yeah,
Before he proposed. So I think that is good because you get insight. And then each person, when you're going through that counseling, the counselor or whoever the mentor is, they can see the blind spots that you can't see.
Yeah.
And if you're really open to growing, it can save some things. It can save your heart and your head.
I would tell somebody who's dating right now, like, don't settle. If you have a list, or you always hear people like, well, you're not going to be perfect, but you can find someone that's perfect for you. You know, it might not be the perfect person in the world. It might, someone told me once, they said, what can you live with and what can't you live without? And I was like, that made a lot of sense to me. They might not do everything right, but what you can't just like, okay, she does this and I gotta have this in my life, or he does this and I can't live without him doing this or whatever. So that was one thing I would tell somebody, like, might not find the perfect person, but find the perfect person for you.
I had to kind of get out of my mind, make a shift in my mind to what marriage was like and what marriage looked like. Because we had seen them, parents were married and all that, but it's still, every marriage is different. So, and I think I brought some of the habits over into my marriage that I saw with my parents. And like my mom, my dad was kind of not, don't spend money. Don't spend money. So my thing was, okay, I saw my mom kind of sneak things in the house. And so my thing was like, ooh, if I bought some shoes, I have to sneak them in the house. Yeah. And then our first year, I think he asked me, he said, why do you hide stuff? And so I had to tell him, but I'm happy that he saw that and mentioned it, because I still maybe, 30 years later, hiding shoes and clothes.
I was finding stuff everywhere. I didn't have a model or anything because I was raised with my grandmother. I lived with my grandmother from 5 months till I was 27. So there was no one around that I could look at. I was like, oh man, or just try to pattern after them or anything like that. So I think, I want to say trial and error, but some of it was some of the things we learned here at Faith Chapel. Pastor Mike, some of the things that he was teaching, the men fellowship, marriage fellowship, and things like that. So couples fellowship. So things like that I think helped me out a lot.
So I got pregnant on our wedding night. That was not planned. We got married July 1st, 2022. I got a positive pregnancy test on July 24th. So we were newlyweds for 3 weeks, and then we transitioned into parents. And like 2 days later, I got sick, and then I was sick the rest of the pregnancy.
So I have 2 other children, boy and a girl, well, girl and a boy. She is now, the oldest one is 14. My son is 8. He'll be 9 sometime this summer. They live up north with their mother currently and dealing with different upbringings. People up north, they can be a little different than, our beliefs in the South. Co-parent with someone with different, backgrounds and stuff. So it could be difficult at times, but you try to make it work the best way you can and try to keep the peace down in your house as much as possibly can.
Well, we had different parenting styles for sure. The way that we grew up, my aunt and uncle raised me, and I'm definitely a daddy's girl. And so I didn't have the structure that he had, being into the military and things like that. We were just a love fest, and I don't even remember getting a spanking. One time. And so he had a different story, a different approach to it.
Yeah.
And we started a group called the Not So Perfect Blend because that was our most challenging time. So we got with two other couples and would meet, and we had the same experiences. So that's probably the
Yeah.
most challenging time. Would you
Yeah.
say?
I would say that it's hard to navigate that because there's a biological bond between the children. There's an experience bond between the biological children. So there's a affinity toward each other. So you have all of that. I came across an illustration that talked about don't put your children in the microwave, put them in a crock pot because it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And like she said, the structure, I came in too hard with the structure when I look back. And I could have learned how to get to know them more instead of the discipline part. Although they needed the discipline part, I heavily leaned on the discipline part instead of the relationship part. And then I started to work on that and recognizing that was a problem or a challenge because I was so bent on being father, and not, but they didn't know me. I didn't know them, And so of course they would clam up and I sometimes felt like a stranger in my own house. But the good thing about it is I'm open to learn and grow. And I was able to be aware of where I was making mistakes through listening to the word, and then go back and try to course correct, and then sit down and have talks and stuff like that, and I took both of them on. We would go on separate dates because they're girls, and try to get to know them. So it's a thing, and I can tell you this, and you may not notice this, but I've noticed it since our youngest has gone off to college, and since I had this injury. We are growing closer because she's coming to check on me. Like when she came home from college, she's making sure she'll come upstairs and bring me what I need. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I noticed that was different because it was when she was growing up and when she was smaller, it was like, you know, and so I noticed that, and then I noticed, and then the middle daughter, she on Father's Day she would tell me different things like, "I know it don't seem like it, but we really needed the structure." That she said, "I know I may have bucked the system, but we really needed it."
We needed it.
And so Crew was born with a heart defect, unbeknownst to us. So at 6 weeks, she was diagnosed with having a hole in her heart. And so that was very tough. She had a hole in her heart. At 6 weeks, she was diagnosed, and maybe, 3 weeks later, she got a feeding tube. So from June to August, when she had open heart surgery, she had a feeding tube. And so the children came mid-June.
Came right after Father's Day. I normally get them right after Father's Day weekend because that's when they get out of school. So they came then. It was a little difficult, dealing with the new baby. So we got all three faces in the house. We got a toddler, we got a baby, we got an infant, a teenager, a toddler. Just continue communicating, no matter how hard it may be. Say what you need to say. And sometimes don't say some things. She say a lot of times in a joking way, like, I want to stay married, so I'm not going to say that. So
I want to stay married.
married.
I like you.
Yeah,
I like you.
So she's sitting there. That's her running line. So and I'll still be like, no, say what you got to say, But even when it could be, a hard conversation, it needs to be had, especially when the other person may be feeling like, they gotta get it off their chest, but you have to say it in a very, very respectful way.
I think we were also very committed to being honest with each other, even when it was hard. Being committed, you can say hard things in a nice way. And so trying to say it the nicest way possible, but still conveying the message is what we had to do. It was a really hard time.
So we lost our son, Ryan, 2022, he's 21. And so that was a tough time for us. That was like nothing else compares to losing a child. And so people asked us, kind of how we navigated. We communicated. I think we got closer. Sometimes people lose a child. They kind of grow apart, but for us, we got closer, and we did things with purpose, on purpose, so we travel, we do the things. But that was a tough, and it still is. We're still navigating through it. But that was the toughest, because we were trying to think, but there is nothing else that could compare to losing a child.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I appreciated was son Janetta during that time is when he was in the hospital for a while, we used to come home at night, and then Jessica would be with us too at first. So she'll say, okay, so what are you feeling? So that gave us the opportunity to share, to talk about it, because that's one of the most important things going through something like this is to talk about it, and instead of keeping it inside and holding it inside and everything like that. So that helped out a lot. Even after the passing of him, she would talk. So what what are you feeling at this point? So we would talk about that. So that helped a lot. And she wanted to go different places, not necessarily out of town, but events in the city and stuff like that. I didn't really want to do that, But so she helped me a lot to kind of help overcome just by being outgoing. Just from his passing, I was more withdrawn. It was tough. So I was going through that, and so if it wasn't for her, I probably would have been just wanted to be at home all the time. So by her wanting to be outgoing and talk about it, so that helped a lot. And I had a friend of mine talked to a pastor friend of his, and he told me, he said, tell LaRon to keep talking. So that helped a lot. So I wouldn't keep it inside, and I was able to talk. So I was talking to people all the time, but not just her, but just people, customers, and things like that. They didn't know what to say, and that's understandable. But a lot of times, a person that's going through grief or mourning like that, they need to get it out. So they just want you to listen. Just realizing that talking is one of the best things you need to do, even if you don't get a response. Because I think most time when you're talking with somebody's trying to think of a solution, especially if you're talking to another man, he wants to try to fix it anyway. So, but just realize that person is just there to listen to you. Just try to help you just by hearing what you got to say.
I mean, relationship to marriage is a safe space. It should be a safe space. And you should be able to, if you can't say it to your spouse, who should be your best friend, then who can you say it to?
Yeah.
You let them get what they need to get off of them, because if she ain't saying it to you, she definitely saying it to somebody else, and vice versa, might still be saying it to somebody else, even the hard stuff. And someone might be saying, hey, say it, don't quite go that far.
Yeah.
Reel it in some, so you got to let them be vulnerable, because we need to be vulnerable as well, too, as men, be able to say how we feel about things, even though we are very guarded, a lot of us are, so when you found that person who you feel like you can say a lot of things with, and you just, be open about things.
With two other couples that were experiencing the same thing. So we knew, okay, it's not us. This is just a thing that happens when you try to blend two families. And we just kind of leaned on each other and got some advice from each other, actually. So it helped us. The reason why I didn't have as much structure is because I was making up for the fact that I was working a lot. So I was giving them whatever you want, you can have it kind of thing. And so that's why the structure was gone. But I needed that. What he was bringing, I needed that. And what I was bringing, the rainbows and butterflies, he needed that. So it kind of worked.
It did. And honestly, it worked out. It's working out because, everybody's growing. And you have this dynamic because even our older two, they were having to adjust.
Yes.
We had to figure out the name thing, so now I'm Pop Pop. I don't know how this came out, but I was called Mr. Quentin. And
I'm Miss Angie. I want to be called Mom.
Yeah, and I want to be called.
But I respect them, and their other
and I wanted to be called Dad or Pops. But then I had to realize they are close to their biological parents, and that's okay. And children don't know what this is about. They're growing students. In fact, it's more challenging for the child in this situation than it is for the adult. So I had to learn, okay, you got to be calm. You got to be sensitive to their needs. I mean, that kind of thing. Because it's really tough for a child because they're wondering why my mom and daddy didn't stay together. They're wondering these things.
And their extended family, their parents, they always say how this is perfect. They always comment that, it's two dads for me. And they always say this is just awesome. It could have been worse. And they are experiencing a good blend.
So we have the
blended
perfect
family.
blend now.
Yes.
I think communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, communicating. Continue to do things together. I think fun things. I think most people like fun things. Just do things and laughing.
Right.
I think laughing helps a lot. And continue to like the person. Because you can be in love with somebody, but liking them is a whole different thing.
Right.
So yeah.
But yeah, it's the communication, especially if something changes. Like I think I mentioned earlier about love languages changing. If they do, because mine changed. Mine changed from time to maybe physical touch, and that was after the loss. And so it changed. So it shifted a little bit. So he needed to know that though. He, not that I was like, okay, I don't want to be around you, but just communicating that. And you can't cater to the person's needs if you don't know what they are. And so, and I asked him, have yours changed? Because I needed to know that. I won't, and I know it's words of affirmation. So I didn't want to not do that, and it was still that, or, kind of evoke my love language on him. But it's different. So I just wanted to make sure he knew what mine was, and then I wanted to make sure that his was still the same or if it had changed.
I think we talked a little bit about this earlier today. It was about having a little bit more grace with her. I told her earlier days, like, what I had to realize is, like, this is a different season, different times. She's a mother now. She's not the young single person I met. So, we do the more individual praying and stuff, and asking God for guidance and how can I show up better for her, and also, but more importantly, how can I show up better for myself to be a better person for her as well? So I just try to stay consistent. That's my goal for this year going forward. Like, try to stay consistent with, showing up for her needs.
You can't, I can't, me personally, and any believer, I cannot deny what the words say. And, okay, I'm going to share a transparent moment, but it's not.
Come on.
Whenever I would get irritated or frustrated, I think they saw it on my face, they would know it.
You do your list of lip thing.
Right.
You did. Uh-huh.
And the Lord dealt with me about it. He dealt with me. And he dealt with me about, he says, just pull away and pray in the Spirit. And not show that on my face. So I was like, I don't want to do it. But I did it. And there was a peace. A peace would come over me. And it would change the whole outlook. And I was thinking it would change their outlook. It changed my outlook. And I thought, that's interesting. So that's something, and I wrote it in my journal. I said, okay, every time that happens, I got to pray in the Spirit. Just pray in the Spirit.
You can't expect the person to be like you. And even though you want to be, even though I say, I know now that I wouldn't want to marry me, but you can't expect that person to be you. And I heard something recently, I don't know who it was, that about happiness, that you feel that person is supposed to make you happy, that it has to start with you. You have to be okay with being happy, or joyful or whatever. You can't expect that person to be that for you. You have to create that on your own, and you'll bring it, but just communicate.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think what happens too is most people try to, they want that person to be a certain way, but you're attracted to that person because they're different. And I think that happens a lot, why you not like this? Why you not doing this? But that's why you're attracted to them, because they were different. And you can't change them, so I think that's important too. Don't try to change the person.
Right.
You got to communicate.
Yes.
You can't go to bed mad. You got to It's a choice. It's as much as I love him and like him, you have to decide to stay married and decide to put in the work. It's not easy, but it's fun. If you believe it's fun, you got to communicate.
One thing I can say about my wife is that when we have any challenges, and if she recognizes an area where she needs to change, she own it, and she'll do that. That right there gives me sticking power to know that her heart is right. And it makes, and I also, and I'm gonna throw a plug out there. I was watching the show yesterday, and it really resonated with what Pastor was saying about the growth part, the growth. We're all growing, and we all got to give each other that time to grow. We all got to give each other that time because I'm growing, she growing. So
I always, so I'm a communicator by profession. I'm not going to say what profession. But I do ask, how's the vulnerability? If there is, if the communication isn't that great. And oftentimes the vulnerability is slim to none. Like, I don't trust him. I don't trust her. That's why the vulnerability piece is so important to me with Keldrick, because I know usually, like, once you lose it, it's so hard to get back. And so if your person is not on their game, if they're not typically showing up how they usually do, even if you have to ask them, like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's going on with you? Like, are you okay? And sometimes it's hard for you to convey that message, communication. It's hard to convey that, like, even in knowing that this is not their norm and how they show up, to, again, give them grace, give them some space in order to do the feels, Yeah.
this is my girl, and she is the most beautiful girl in the world. This my girl.
Marry your friend.
This is my girl right here.
I would say marry your friend and don't compare that person that you're to be with what you see on TV. Be realistic.
And one thing I would say that I shared with her this morning, she is never boring. Never boring. I mean, it stretches me sometimes to do some of the, because I'm just like, I eat the same thing, I dress the same way, I go to the same things. I mean, so I get into it, but she is never boring.
We have fun, and we're always do some new things together too. Don't get into a routine. Try something new together. Build new traditions. We have traditions that we do, but we're open to new traditions. And and learn some new technology together. Just be open to some things.
Yeah.
He mentioned about liking the person, and I was telling a young person, single person, I said, loving somebody, I think that's easy. That's an easy thing. I said, but liking them, like, I genuinely like him. We're friends, too. We're not just spouse. We're not just husband and wife. So, but I would say, yeah, of course, God, spending time, communication, still having your separate time too, because he knows, like, I know when he wants to be by himself, when he watching whatever, I can be in another room watching whatever, and it's okay. But we kind of know each other's moments that we need to have, like, alone time. So I heard something recently, I don't know who it was, that about happiness, that you feel that person is supposed to make you happy, that it has to start with you. You have to be okay with being happy, or joyful or whatever. You can't expect that person to be that for you. You have to create that on your own, and you'll bring it, But just communicate.